Most people think that building wealth is, a hard science. They think it's all about being a math genius, having this crazy high IQ, or knowing exactly how to model market trends on a fancy spreadsheet. But the reality? The reality is completely different. And honestly, once you understand this, it changes absolutely everything you know about money. Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're revealing the hidden operating system behind financial success, pulling straight from Morgan Housel's groundbreaking work. We're not just going to sit here and list off facts. Instead, we're mapping out a complete decision framework that will literally rewire how you interact with your money. Okay, let's dive right into this contradiction, because it perfectly sets up the core problem. On one side, you've got the old way of thinking. Richard Fiscone, a highly educated, brilliant financial executive who literally went bankrupt. And on the other side, the reality. Ronald Reed, a humble, everyday janitor who passed away with a multi-million-dollar fortune. Seriously, how is it even possible that an everyday janitor completely outperformed a brilliant Wall Street executive?
Well, it brilliantly illustrates the overarching principle of this entire system. As Morgan Housel puts it, doing well with money has a little to do with how smart you are and a lot to do with how you behave. Financial success is not some exclusive, hard science reserved for Wall Street analysts. It's an accessible soft skill. It is, at its core, entirely about behavior.
Section 1. The Math Illusion. Why Smart People Go Broke.
So once you actually understand why our normal way of thinking fails, you can start rewiring your own mental models. Look, people fail because they treat money like a giant puzzle to be solved. They try to optimize the returns using hard science, pure math, and IQ. But money doesn't exist in a vacuum, right? It operates inside human minds. The truth is, wealth management is a soft skill. It relies on your behavior, your psychology, and your personal systems.
Which brings us to a crucial question. If your intelligence and those fancy college degrees don't guarantee you'll build wealth, what actually does? If a spreadsheet is the wrong tool for the job, what's the right one?
Section 2. The hidden behavioral system. The invisible mechanism driving outcomes.
We have to completely replace that spreadsheet with a psychological map. This visual really reveals exactly what we're dealing with here. It's not just a random list of finance tips. It's a fully structured, mapped-out decision system. It proves that wealth is actually the end result of this interconnected web of behaviors, emotional controls, and psychological boundaries.
Let's quickly break down the macro pillars of this system before we get into the specific mental models. First up, behavior over intelligence. Basically, how you act beats what you know every single time. Second, avoid big losses. Survival in the market is always more important than chasing high returns. Third, control what you can. You can't control the stock market, but you sure can control yourself. And finally, time is the ultimate multiplier. Small actions compound massively when you give them decades to grow.
Model 1. The lens of experience. Why no one is crazy.
Now, this framework is going to completely shift your paradigm on how you judge financial decisions, both yours and everyone else's. Look, people do crazy things with money, but in reality, no one is actually crazy. People born in different generations and different economies, or just with different amounts of luck, they learn wildly different lessons. Someone who grew up during crazy high inflation has a completely different rulebook in their head than someone who grew up during a massive tech boom.
Just consider this staggering number, 0.0000001%. That tiny, almost invisible statistic, that represents exactly how much of the world's actual, historical events make up your own personal, lived experience.
But then look at the second half of that equation. That tiny little sliver of experience makes up maybe 80% of how you think the world works. The danger here is huge. We base the vast majority of our entire worldview on a minuscule fraction of actual reality. So when someone makes a choice you completely disagree with, they're not being irrational. They're just operating on a totally different data set than you are.
Model 2. The wealth paradox. The illusion of riches.
Most people have a fundamental, completely backward misunderstanding of what wealth actually looks like in the real world. Being rich is a public display. It's your current income, it's buying flashy things just to show off your status. Think about the singer Rihanna. She famously almost went bankrupt because she overspent trying to show off exactly this kind of richness. But being wealthy, that's entirely different. True wealth is hidden. It's the unspent money, the unbought cars, the diamonds you didn't purchase. That is what actually gives you options and freedom.
When Rihanna actually sued her financial advisor, his brutally honest response became this legendary lesson. He literally said, was it really necessary to tell her that if you spend money on things, you will end up with the things and not the money? I mean, it sounds kind of funny, right? But it brilliantly highlights a deep truth. The desire to spend is the literal opposite of being a millionaire. Wealth is what you do not see.
Model 3, the sustainability principle. Reasonable over rational.
All right, this is how you build a decision system that actually survives real-world turbulence. Aiming to be mostly reasonable works far, far better than trying to be coldly rational. Why? Because you are a messy, emotional human being, not a spreadsheet. A perfectly rational financial plan that you abandon the second there's a market panic, utterly useless. But a slightly less optimal, reasonable plan that you can actually stick with for 20 years, that is what builds empires.
This perfectly illustrates how a reasonable mindset handles market drops. When your portfolio crashes, a totally rational mind panics. They see it as a fine, like a punishment for making a mistake. But a reasonable mind reframes it. Volatility is just a fee. It is the unavoidable price of admission for long-term growth. Just like you pay a crazy high ticket price to get into Disneyland, you pay with volatility to experience the magic of compounding.
But, this creates another problem. Why do incredibly smart people still fail to save, even if they cognitively know all these models? Let's transition from the theory here into some practical, real-world application.
Application. Playing your own game. Stopping the moving goalpost.
This is where the entire system starts changing your real-world decisions by basically forcing you to define your own rules. Consider this one rule. Beware taking financial cues from people playing a completely different game than you are. The ultimate trap is just blindly copying others. Important financial decisions aren't made in textbooks. They're made around the dinner table. They are made to minimize the chance of disappointing your family, not just to make a chart look good. You have to know what game you're actually playing.
So the crucial point is how we actually execute this. We need to transform the abstract, kind of boring concept of saving money into a tangible, three-step psychological flow. Step 1, spend less. Pretty obvious. Step 2, you can only spend less if you desire less. And step 3, you will only desire less if you care less about what other people think of you. Saving isn't some clever finance trick, it's a literal ego defense mechanism.
And that brings us to the ultimate transformation. You have to stop seeing money as a tool to buy status and start seeing it as a tool to buy back your time. The single highest dividend that money pays is just the ability to wake up every morning and say, I can do whatever I want today. Financial freedom at its core is just having control over your time.
I want to leave you with this incredibly powerful, memorable rule to really anchor this entire system. There is no reason to risk what you have and need for what you don't have and don't need. If you can just stop the goalpost from moving, if you can step off that exhausting treadmill of comparison, you shift away from chasing stressful, irrational returns, and you start building a reasonable, sustainable life. So I'll leave you with this. Ask yourself today, whose game are you actually playing?